Hey guys, today I have another rogue build for you, and it's a build that I really enjoyed playing in the last couple of days. I had a lot of fun with it, and I call it the Andariels Poison Rogue. So to be fair, I want to mention just in the beginning that there's another YouTuber called Xario who already posted a similar build in the last weeks. So for everyone who is quite often on this channel, you should be familiar with the fact that I'm a big fan of Xario myself, so I can highly recommend you checking out his videos as well. And so yeah, I just wanted to be fair and mention his name since he was first, but I also wanted to make such a build in Season 3 since I already made a Andariels Puncture guide in Season 2 as well. And my build is also a little bit different from Xario's build. I tried to optimize it even further for the upcoming Gauntlet event, so my builds always are focusing more on these leaderboards that will get released soon. So yeah, that's the stuff I wanted to discuss first, and now let's go into this build. So how does this build work? We have two main sources of damage. The first one is Andariels Visage itself, and the second source of damage is the Xfal ring. So let's talk about Andariels Visage first. So with this build we just want to quickly and consistently proc our Andariels Visage unique helmet. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a Uber unique that drops by Andariel. So it's very rare to get one of these, but if you were lucky enough to find one, then this is the perfect rogue build for you. The way how Andariels Visage works is basically you have a 25% lucky chance to proc this huge poison nova explosion, which you can see all the time happening here. So this big green explosion is this poison nova from Andariels Visage. So we just want to proc it as fast and as consistent as possible, and for that reason we just simply use our puncture skill. So puncture is a basic skill from the rogue class, which has a very quick, very fast attack speed, and also quite a high lucky chance. And for that reason, it's just a perfect skill to trigger our Andariels Visage, and it also costs no energy, so that's also obviously very good. And then we also play with Flurry as our core skill, but Flurry is only like a support skill here, so we do not deal any damage with it. We just use Flurry for some additional benefits. So first of all, it gives us a huge attack speed bonus of 45% if we cast it with 3 combo points. And then we use Flurry as our imbuable skill to apply our cold and poison imbuement, which I will also be covering in a few seconds or minutes. So but basically the way how we deal, like the first big part of our damage is, like I mentioned, Andariels Visage. You just need to cast your puncture, spam your puncture, and you will proc this poison explosions from time to time. And they can grow very quickly, so we are reaching very fast this 500k to even 1 million poison DPS. And by the way, here you saw me clearing a tier 100 Nightmare Dungeon or Nightmare Vault. I usually don't see much benefit in clearing such high tiers, but I know that many of you guys always ask me in the comments if I could show you some tier 100 gameplay, so obviously that's very important for you guys, so that's why I decided to start this guide with a tier 100 clear. And now you can see me running a tier 73 Nightmare Vault, so this is much closer to simulate the upcoming Gauntlet dungeons. So in the leaderboard dungeons, the monster level will be 124, or at least that's the information we have so far. So for that reason, you need to practice more of this tier 70 dungeons, so you don't need to go as high as tier 100. And yes, so now let's continue with the skill rotation. So Puncture and Flurry is just enough to proc your Andariels Visage. And the second part, the second damage source, as I mentioned, is your Xfal ring. So Xfal ring is also a unique ring that drops from Andariel, but it's not a Uber ring or something, it's just a regular unique. So you have pretty high odds finding one in your season journey. And this ring also works with a lucky hit chance, so you have 50% lucky hit to erupt a big, like to basically transform your damage over time effects into a huge poison explosion, which can also deal about 1 to 2 million damage on average. So every time you see this poison explosions where the enemies die instantly, this is not Andariels Visage, but this is the Xfal ring, which deals this poison eruption explosions. And the most simple way to proc this Xfal ring and this poison explosion is by simply imbuing our flurry with poison imbuement. So if we cast poison imbuement, like if we cast flurry with poison imbuement, and hit multiple enemies around us, then it's very likely that it will proc at least one Xfal ring poison explosion, which is just enough to clear all of the trash and even sometimes the elite mobs. So 2 million damage is no joke, especially in this tier 70 dungeons. So this is basically the second source of damage. That's why you want to cast your poison imbuement as often as possible, basically. And then you also have noticed that I'm playing with cold imbuement, and the reason for that is also very simple. We just use cold imbuement with flurry to instantly freeze enemies. So maybe you can see here I'm instantly freezing all of these elite enemies around me, and we do this to just benefit from some further damage multipliers such as Frigid Finesse, which gives us up to 60% more damage with 6 ranks invested, or the control glyph, which gives us 20% more damage as well versus frozen enemies. So this is the reason for these two imbuements: cold for freezing and poison for triggering our Xfal ring. And yeah, that's basically it. Then you use your mobility skills for obviously zooming through the map, and you use dash and empty passages to quickly maneuver through the map, and you use shadow step also as often as possible. So shadow step is kinda the teleport skill of the rogue class if you compare it to the sorcerer. So it's a very fast build, as you can imagine, and I even managed to beat my time record in this dungeon vaults. If I compare this to my previously played Penshot Barber Rogue. So I made a video last week about the Penshot Barber Rogue, which is the best gauntlet build for the rogue class and also the best meta build in general, I think. But with this build I even managed to beat my time record. So actually this one is also a very strong competitor for the upcoming leaderboards, and I'm already thinking of switching to this build, or like starting with this build first before switching back to my Penshot Rogue. So the clear speed is very huge here. And the last thing that I want to mention is you basically can run two different setups of this build. So for example here, and also in the first gameplay shown, I'm playing with this Temerity setup. So that's why I'm generating this huge barrier around my health bar. So Temerity gives me up to 80% of my maximum life, grants me this 80% of as a barrier. So just like the sorcerer class kinda. And then we also combine this with an offensive aspect on our crossbow, which gives us 50% more damage while we have a barrier active. So here we use it for both damage and survivability, and especially if you also want to clear some higher tiers like tier 90 or tier 100, then I can recommend you playing with this setup. So Temerity and this aspect on your crossbow, I think it's called Conduit, I'm not sure, I will show you later in the gear section. And the second option would be running Tibaults Will instead of Temerity, and then just run the aspect of elements on your crossbow. With this setup you will deal even more damage on average, but you won't have this barrier obviously, so you will be less tanky. So if you want to focus only on the upcoming Gauntlet events, I can recommend you playing with Tibaults Will. And in general, I can recommend you playing with this Temerity setup. So that's also something I wanted to show you. And now I want to go over to the big disadvantage of this build. So, or like the last sentence to this, to the advantages of this build, you can see I'm just clearing super fast. We have a lot of AoE damage, just like Penshot Rogue, and we just simply spam our Puncture and our Flurry from time to time. So you only need to cast Flurry once every 3 seconds to maintain all of the attack speed and damage bonus buffs. So I think it's I consider this a very simple build in general. Yeah, you can see it's a very huge. It has very huge AoE damage, very high damage output in general. And now if I switch over to the disadvantages of this build, it has at least one disadvantage, which is fighting bosses. And actually first I want to show you this boss fight here. So here you can see me fighting the hardest boss in the tier 100 dungeon, which is this Seahawk. It has the most HP as far as I know. And here you can see with the timer, which is tracking the time in the left top corner, that it takes quite a while to finish off this boss. And also I'm taking quite a big amount of damage here because I don't have the maximum armor cap for tier 100 actually. So yeah, you can see it's not the fastest boss killer build for the Rogue class, so rapid fire would be much faster, especially with the current crossbow weapon mastery bug. But after this video I will show you another setup which allows me to kill bosses actually double as quick, double as fast. So here it took me 42 seconds roughly, because I did no item swaps, no gear swaps or something. It was the build that I also used in the tier 100 vault. But yeah, you can see it took me 42 seconds to clear this, to kill this tier 100 boss. And now I can show you another setup here. So here I'm playing with Fist of Fate. So I switched my gloves for Fist of Fates just before this boss fight. And here you can see I'm staggering this boss much more quick than compared to the previous video. And after I staggered the boss, it's very easy to finish him off because my damage just yeah, explodes. And you can, for example, see that my poison ticks are reaching this. They should reach about 2 million. Yeah, here 1.9 million. This is the current poison tick. So after you have staggered the boss, it's very easy to finish him off. So here it took me just 21 seconds to clear this tier 99 boss. But this only works if we are able to switch gear. So here I swapped my gloves for Fist of Fates, and I can also show you now in the gameplay, in-game here. So with Fist of Fates you can very quickly stagger bosses, and then it becomes much more easy. But yeah, like I mentioned, we don't know if we are allowed to swap gear in the upcoming leaderboards. So this could be a huge disadvantage compared to the Penshot rapid fire rogue. So that's for that. And now I can also show you quickly how this build works again. So like I mentioned, the main source of damage comes from Andariels Visage and our Xfal ring. So you can see I just if I just start attacking with my Puncture, I already start proccing my Andariels Visage, which then yeah, gets this poison novas procced, and then my poison ticks go higher and higher. And if I combine this with some further damage multipliers like my Temerity, Barrier, and if I, for example, freeze the enemies first with my Cold Imbuement and Flurry, you can see the poison ticks get really high, over 1 million. And also if I cast my Poison Imbuement, then it can get also even higher. And also, like I mentioned, in order to proc your Xfal ring, it's important to cast your Poison Imbuement as often as possible. So here I just activate my Poison Imbuement and cast it with Flurry. And here you already saw one explosion, so this was the Xfal ring explosion. Maybe you can see here another one. So here you saw one with 1.5 million, here one with 800k. So it always depends, of course, on the damage multipliers. If I freeze them first, again, I will have more damage here. But in general, so here another two. In general, you can see how this works. We just want to proc as often as possible this Xfal ring explosions for even more AoE damage. And our Andariels Visage is dealing with the rest. So very simple. Like I mentioned, Flurry, you only need to cast it once every 3 seconds. Then you will benefit from this 45% attack speed bonus, as you can see here. We get it after consuming 3 combo points. So very simple skill rotation basically. Now if I go over the gear, like I mentioned, you need to have Andariels Visage. Obviously this is a build around this Uber unique, so if you don't have one yet, then it's not really recommended to play this build. You could play only with the Xfal ring, but I think it's not as much fun as with Andariel. So then we have some further uniques. I am playing with Xfal ring, as I explained. Then I also play with Ring of Starless Skies. So this one is not mandatory, but it will boost your damage even further. So here you can deal up to 40% more damage after you cast your Flurry 4 times in a row. So that's why we also want to cast Flurry every 3 seconds to maintain this attack power boost from Ring of Starless Skies if you have one. But it's not mandatory. If you don't have one, you can just play with a good ring with critical strike damage, maximum life, damage versus crowd control, vulnerable damage, something like that. I will, of course, give you that in the planner as well. And then we have Ashira's Kanjar as our unique dagger. So here we have a lot of great stats. We have lucky hit chance, we have damage to crowd control enemies, which we need for close quarters combat passive, and also deal up can reach up to 30% increased attack speed bonus, which is also very good. So like I mentioned, we want lucky hit chance and attack speed bonus for this build, and so that's the reason for that. Then we have either Temerity or Tibaults Will, like I mentioned. So if you play with Tibaults Will, then you want to play with aspect of elements on your crossbow. This is the more perfect build for the Gauntlet dungeons. And in general, I can recommend you playing with Temerity, and then you want to play with this conceited aspect on your crossbow, so you deal more damage while having a barrier active. And so this is the setup I recommend in general. So yeah, these are your uniques. Then I can go over some other gear pieces. So on your amulet, you usually want movement speed, total armor, cooldown reduction, and then either ranks of frigid finesse or exploit. So you deal more damage, and you want your rapid aspect on your amulet. So you get 45% increased basic attack speed. So you can see we are attacking very quickly with the setup here. I think it's the fastest attack speed that the rogue class can reach right now. So that's why we want as much attack speed as possible on our gear. On your gloves, you want critical strike chance, lucky hit, and also attack speed. So here I don't have attack speed yet. This is not a perfect pair of gloves. On your chest plate, you just want total armor and then 3 different damage reduction affixes. And since I'm already optimizing for the Gauntlet event, I'm playing with exactly 11k armor. So 11k armor is the exact armor cap for tier 70 monsters. So for level 124 monsters, this is your armor cap. So we can easily reach it by having 2 total armor affixes on our amulet and on our chest plate, and then I put 2 skulls into jewelry, and then I reach this 11k armor. So if you also want to optimize your build for the Gauntlet, I can also recommend reaching this 11k, and for that reason I don't play with the Juggernaut aspect on my chest, which would even further increase my armor, but instead I'm playing with a Might, which just gives me additional 20% damage reduction. But of course you can also just play with the Juggernaut, and then you don't care too much about your armor cap. And then on my boots I have movement speed plus 4 ranks of dash in order to reduce my cooldown for dash, and 2 further resistances, and then together with Starless Skies and another resistance in the jewelry, I am reaching my 70% resistance cap everywhere. So we are good to go here. And on your dagger and on your gloves, you want to put this flurry aspect, which allows you to cast flurry in a circle. So this way you can very easily freeze all enemies with cold imbuement. and so flurry aspect, and then you want this pestilent points aspect. Maybe there are some better options, but right now I couldn't think of anything better than that. So with pestilent points, your puncture also is poison imbued every third cast, and this also has some advantages. One advantage is it can also proc your Xfal ring from time to time, like you just saw a few seconds ago. And also you can reset your poison imbuement cooldown actually. So if I activate my poison imbuement and then start casting puncture, you can see I'm also resetting my cooldown from time to time. And this is because we are playing with mixed poison imbuement, which resets our cooldown by 2 seconds if we hit this 30% lucky chance. So for that reason, pestilent points is really good as well. So for now I'm playing with this aspect, but maybe you can think of something better. So that's for the gear. Then on my companion I have this combination of Flash of Adrenaline with Tactical, Duration and Genesis. This just gives me 50% more damage, active all the time. And then I'm playing with Tempest and Safeguard, Evernight and Slowing Support. So slowing support is only for bosses. So my idea here is that with slowing I'm just able to even quicker stagger my bosses here. So you can see the companion attacks and slows the boss and slowly increases the stagger bar here. So that's the main idea for this stone here. And Evernight and Safeguard obviously are just very powerful buffs for your character. So now let's remove it to avoid the attacks here. And I think now we can just go over the skills very quickly. So here I'm playing with Fundamental Puncture. Obviously Puncture is our main source of main attack kinda. So we need Fundamental Puncture, and then we need all of these passive nodes here. They're very good. And then you can see I'm only investing 1 point, 1 rank into Flurry, because like mentioned we are not dealing damage with Flurry, but Flurry is only, the purpose of Flurry is only to proc our Cold Imbuement and Poison Imbuement. So for that reason we don't need any more points here. And also I don't need Advanced Flurry or Improved Flurry, I just take this Enhanced Flurry for more healing. And then here we take Discipline Shadow Step, so we can cast Shadow Step as often as possible. I also invest the maximum amount of points into Dash to reduce the cooldown, because in the Gauntlet dungeons the speed will be the #1 factor of success. Then 3 points into Weapon Mastery and also Malice and Exploit for more damage. Here I also invested into Agile, but it's not mandatory. I just had no better idea where I can put the last points in. Here you can see I'm only putting 1 point into Poison Imbuement. So again, we are not dealing damage with Poison Imbuement itself, but we just want to proc our Xfal ring with Poison Imbuement. So for that reason 1 point is just enough. And here Mixed Poison Imbuement again reduces our cooldown by 2 seconds. And this way we can spam our Poison Imbuement very quickly with Puncture, like you can see here. Then we take all of these passives here for damage reduction, attack speed and damage. Frigid Finesse for more damage. 1 point into Cold Imbuement is just enough to freeze all elite packs when needed. 3 points into Alchemist's Fortune for lucky hit chance. 3 points into Haste as always. And here Close Quarters Combat as our key passive. So this one also scales our poison damage of Andariel and Xfal. And then the Paragon board in the end. Here we are starting with Bane. Bane can also scale your poison damage of Andariel and has this chance of dealing double damage during the poison duration. Then the second board is Cheap Shot. We take this legendary node and then we play with a Tracker Glyph. So also this glyph also can scale our poison damage of Andariel and also a little bit of Xfal ring. And here we take all of this damage to crowd control enemies, nodes, because we're playing with the Close Quarters Combat passive. And also take these nodes here. Then we go into Tricks of the Trade. Here we play with Devious, which is also good versus bosses, and gives us additional armor in order to reach our 11k armor cap. Then I like to take all of these nodes here, which give me damage reduction to close enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies, and also shadow resistance. So I can, also cover my shadow resistance cap here. Then we go into No Witness with this combination of efficacy, which I use pretty often to get this huge 18% maximum life bonus. Then we go into Larinus Instinct. Here I play with the control glyph because we have the maximum amount of intelligence nodes for maximum damage. And the last board is Eldritch Bounty. We take this node here. This gives us also 20% more damage for our Andariels Visage and Xfal ring after casting Poison Imbuement. Another reason why Pestilent Points is very good, so we can also proc Poison Imbuement with our Puncture. And here we take Exploit to obviously make enemies vulnerable and further increase our damage. So yeah, that's it. Last words about this build. Like I mentioned, it really surprised me how powerful this build is. So I even beat my time record, as I mentioned, from my Penshot Rogue, which I consider to be the best Gauntlet Rogue build. But this one is a very close competitor and might be even better than Penshot Rogue in some situations. It also has very huge AoE damage, very fast speed. So yeah, it's basically very close between these two builds, and I will probably start with this build since it's something fresh and new. So yeah, very great build. Again, credits to Xario. I also got a little bit inspired by him, but like I mentioned, I also planned making this guide for Season 3, but also check out his video if you like. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this content. Don't forget to leave me a like or subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss any further Diablo 4 content on this channel. And I wish you guys a nice day and see you next one. Bye bye.